picking up a book feels overwhelming right now. If you used to be a reader, but something changed and now it feels impossible. Or if you have books on your shelf that you're actively avoiding because you're scared they'll be too hard, I get it. And this is the right video for you. I used to be one of those people who would stay up way too late telling myself just one more chapter. I'd get so lost in books, I'd forget to eat. Reading was just who I was. Until about 10 years ago, after a major car accident and a brain injury, and it wasn't who I was anymore. Suddenly, this thing that had been as natural as breathing became impossible for me to do. It was like I suddenly had moderate to severe dyslexia, except I didn't. It felt like part of my identity had been stolen. Oh, and this is Tucker, if you're wondering, by the way. He's been my reading companion throughout this whole journey. Maybe for you, it wasn't a brain injury. Maybe it was depression, or ADHD, or long COVID, or chronic illness, or just life getting so overwhelming that your brain forgot how to focus on anything longer than a social media post. Whatever changed your reading ability, you're not broken. I'm not broken. We're not broken. You're just out of practice. It's been 10 years since my accident, and while I'm not the same reader I used to be, and honestly, I never will be, I have found ways to have reading back in my life. Now it's different, but it's mine. And the strategies that helped me rebuild work for anyone whose reading muscle has gotten out of shape. Over the next few weeks, I'm creating a series of videos to help different groups of people find their way back to reading, or discover reading for the first time. This particular video focuses on rebuilding your reading brain after illness, injury, or cognitive changes. But I'm also planning videos for complete beginners who want to become readers, people stuck in reading slumps, and those intimidated by classics. Because the truth is, we all need different strategies depending on where we're starting from. So, here's the thing that no one tells you. Reading is literally like a muscle. And just like any muscle, when you don't use it regularly, it gets weak. If you used to run marathons and then you stopped for 2 years, you wouldn't expect to jump right back into a 26-mile run on day one, would you? I wouldn't. But somehow, we expect our brains to pick up right where they left off with reading. Your brain gets out of the habit of sustained focus. We train it to expect constant stimulation, notifications, quick dopamine hits, rapid-fire content. When you sit down with a book that requires 20 to 30 minutes of sustained attention, your brain basically goes, wait, what? We're just sitting here with one thing? As someone who thinks about problems systematically, I realized that reading involves multiple muscles, if you will, that need to work together. Focus stamina, how long you can concentrate, processing speed, how quickly you can comprehend text, working memory, holding plot and character details while reading, and visual tracking, following text without losing your place. The good news? Some of these muscles can be strengthened with practice. The realistic news? It takes time, patience, and acceptance that your new normal might look different than before. All those muscles that I mentioned, they were all broken for me, and they've only been partially repaired, which means that for me, I'm never going to be the reader I was 10 years ago. I still have lots of concentration issues. I still have a lot of memory problems, a lot of brain fog, a lot of things. And there are entire genres I just completely avoid because I know they'll be too confusing for my brain now. But I can have some reading back in my life, which is better than none. This isn't about getting back to normal. For many of us, that's not realistic or possible. This is about finding a sustainable way to have books in your life again, even if it looks completely different than before. Instead of trying to force my brain back to where it was, I had to learn how to work within my limitations. So, here's how I actually did it. And I started even more basic than you might think. I'm talking about children's and middle grade books here. Books with pictures, larger print, simple storylines. Yes, it definitely felt weird at first. Imagine, a children's book is too difficult for an adult. But I had to meet my brain where it was, not where I wanted it to be. I used to use a piece of paper or a bookmark to expose only one line at a time. This helped my brain not get overwhelmed or to lose my place. It also helped my brain not skip lines or skip words. I could track it a little bit easier. Eventually, that became using my finger to pace myself. I just used whatever worked. The second I felt a headache, brain fog got worse, or confusion set in, I stopped. I still get headaches, I still get brain fog, and I still get confused sometimes when I read. And when that happens, I always stop. I don't try to push through. This isn't about being tough. This is about not making your brain associate reading with pain or discomfort or displeasure or frustration. We want our brains to be happy with reading. If a children's book was too hard, I put it down and I tried a different one. There was no shame, no guilt. Your energy is really limited, so you should spend it on books that work for your brain right now. Here's probably a big surprise for you. I stayed with middle grade books for 3 years. 3 years. When I finally tried a YA book, I chose very carefully. I chose books with familiar worlds, not high fantasy with complex world building. And my only middle grade, and maybe YA, but definitely no adult books yet phase. With one exception of an adult series that I'd started before my accident, that phase only ended for me in January of this year, 6 months ago. I actually started this YouTube channel because I wanted to read adult books again, and I thought it would give me a good reason to push myself. I still love YA and middle grade though. I started taking very basic notes, and I am not a natural note taker when it comes to reading. When I was in school and I needed to take notes for academic purposes, I did. But when I read for pleasure, I never took notes. I never highlighted. I never did any of that stuff. And so this was kind of a new concept for me, but I really hated forgetting everything. I get really frustrated. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get a Post-it note and I'm just going to write the simple plot points, a couple of words. I'm just going to write some character names. That's it. And then I would stick it in the page where I stopped reading so that the next time that I picked up the book, I could look at that Post-it note for just a glance, and then I would have enough and I could keep going. And then I'd either write myself a new one when I was done, or I would add to that one if it was still relevant. And that really, really helped because my memory wasn't reliable anymore. And honestly, it's still not. So external support really helped. So I'll show you some of the books that I started with. The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. This book was one of my first successes, as was its sequel, The Wild Robot Escapes. Now, these books work for me because they have larger text and they have interesting illustrations. And it's a genuinely great story. And I got to bond with my kids over these stories, which was an added bonus. There was another one that I moved on to, We Dream of Space by Erin Entrada Kelly. Sorry, I forgot the author for a second there. This book worked for me because, again, it has larger font. And it takes place in the 80s, which is a very nostalgic setting for me, and so it felt familiar to my brain. And my first successful YA novel was Lore by Alexandra Bracken. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Didn't she just say that she avoids fantasy? I didn't. I said I avoid high fantasy. This is not high fantasy. Lore is based in our world, our real world, with some fantastical elements. And it is based on Greek mythology, which I've always loved. and I was very familiar with Greek mythology long before my car accident. And so my brain was already familiar with Greek names, Greek stories, and it takes place in the real world. Now, I'll be honest, I did have a couple of false starts with this book. I tried, I started, I couldn't. It got to be too much. I stopped, I picked it up again, one of those. But I was eventually able to successfully finish this book. And so it's part of the reason why I know some fantasies are okay, and others are just too much. When they start getting really complex names, unfamiliar worlds, lots of things that are just, names are like not even spelled appropriately because they're just made up, right? When it's those types of books, I can't read them. And so you probably won't see me read any of those books on this channel. Sorry for any high fantasy lovers. I wish I could. I just can't. I want to be completely honest about what this progress actually looks like in real life. I had what felt like a great reading month back in April. But looking back, that month was filled with 2 YA books, one of which was a novella, 1 middle grade book, an audiobook memoir, which tends to be easier to understand, a classic book that actually took me a couple of months to finish, and some non-challenging adult books. The hardest adult book that I read, I did end up loving it quite a bit, but I had to read those first few chapters multiple times just to orient myself to the story. And that great month, it cost me, and I'm still paying for it 2 months later. Since that time, my reading has gone way down. This month, I've only finished 1 book, and it took me about a month because I started it in late May. I've had several reading breaks since then of about 1 to 2 weeks. I'm leaning harder on audiobooks again right now. I look at all these wonderful books on my shelves, books I've hauled recently, books I definitely intend to read. And I'm saddened to realize that it's going to take me a hell of a lot longer than I originally had thought or hoped. My journey back to adult books is still very much an active work in progress. And I've got a long way to go, which kind of makes the idea of starting a booktube channel a bit crazy, right? But I really want to build a community where we can discuss books and find like-minded people and support each other on these journeys. I can't be the only one going through something like this. I just finished a book called Calla by Colin Walsh. It's an Irish novel that I chose to read so that I could get into travel mode for my upcoming Ireland trip. It took me almost a month to read, and it's probably the most challenging adult novel I've read since my accident. I'm going to be really real with you here. The familial relationships were so confusing that even though there's a family tree at the beginning of the book, I stopped trying to figure out how everyone was related after about the first chapter. I just read the rest, being okay with not knowing. It's an Irish book with a lot of local dialect. I skipped words and phrases I didn't understand. It's a mystery book, and I love mysteries. But when the plot got really complex, I just gave up trying to manage all the details. I kept the main plot points in my head, and I let everything else go. It has 3 different first-person narrators, and one was way easier to follow than the other 2. So, with the harder ones, I just let myself be okay with not understanding everything that was happening in those chapters. The very last page actually confused me quite a bit. I read it 3 times, and I still had questions. But I finally decided, you know what, it's okay. I don't really need to know. If you do know what happens on that last page, tell me. Who are they saying hi to? I couldn't figure it out. Here's the important part though. I like the book quite a bit. And more importantly, I would have given up entirely on that book last year, maybe even 6 months ago. As strange as it might sound, finishing this book while understanding maybe only 70% of it is still actually quite an accomplishment for me. And you probably wouldn't have known that I missed stuff if I didn't tell you. That's what progress looks like for me now, not perfect comprehension. but enough engagement to enjoy the story and the determination to see it through. All right, here's something that no one prepared me for. How could they? They didn't know. You have to grieve the reader that you used to be, or the reader that you hoped to be, but you have limitations that won't allow you to be that way. I had to mourn that person who used to devour a 400-page book in one sitting, who could juggle multiple complex storylines, who never forgot character names, who never had to take notes. That person, she's gone. And pretending otherwise just made everything a lot harder. So I have some books on my shelf that I am actively avoiding. One of them is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Now I know I've mentioned this book several times on my channel. This was my favorite classic as a teenager, but I know that it's too complex for me to try now. I may attempt reading it again sometime in the future, but it'll be far off in the future when I am very confident that I'll be able to get through this without any issues. And that's a long time from now. And then there's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. I don't know what I was thinking when I bought this. I really don't. I had heard how popular it was, and I was like, oh, that'll be a good book for when I get better at reading. Like 4 years ago. I made it maybe 5 pages, and there were several headaches in just those pages. So I gave up. This one's never getting read. I mean, this one's like really heavy, by the way. For paperback, super heavy. That just goes to show I have books that I'm avoiding too. I avoid certain books not out of fear of disappointment, but because I know that pushing too hard can trigger medical episodes, and that does actually happen more frequently than you might think. I've learned that feeling too much frustration or anger will discourage me for months, so I stay in my safe zone most of the time. I take the spoon theory very seriously. If you're not familiar with spoon theory, it's an analogy that people with chronic illnesses and injuries use to explain how their energy works differently than someone who is more healthy. And the basic concept is you have a certain number of energy bars, and each energy bar is represented by a spoon. And so doing a certain task or a certain thing costs you a certain amount of spoons. If you do too much in one day, what you end up doing is you borrow spoons from the next day. Well, people who are more healthy, they can generate almost an unlimited number of spoons with just some rest. However, people with chronic illnesses and other kinds of conditions, it's not easy for us to do. And so what we're really doing when we borrow spoons from future days, we don't get those spoons back. Those spoons don't get regenerated. We just live with less spoons the next day. And if we do too much borrowing, we reach a point where we're pretty much bedridden until we can get those spoons back. So, if I'm going to borrow energy from other parts of my life for a book, it better be a damn good book. I carried an Owl Crate subscription for years. It was part of my pipe dream of getting back to reading. I felt like as long as I was receiving those monthly boxes and I was going through them and like reading the jacket and saying, ooh, that sounds super interesting, it was gonna like encourage me to be able to read more. That didn't happen. I have so many Owl Crate books that are sitting on my shelf unread. And honestly, many of them will probably remain unread by me. And it's because most of those plots are probably too complicated. But I'm planning to look through them again and attempt the ones that seem less challenging than they might have a few years ago. I've had to give myself permission to be imperfect. If it takes me months to finish a book, so be it. If I don't understand half of it, but it's otherwise enjoyable, that's okay. I literally have no memory of reading some chapters sometimes. It's annoying, but I just go back and read it again without getting mad about it. DNFs are not just okay, they are very necessary. Don't waste your limited energy on books that aren't working for you. I no longer care if people think I'm lowering my intelligence by reading middle grade books. Some of the best stories are found in middle grade books. Also, my intelligence was like literally lowered by this brain injury, so I mean, I'm not actually lowering my intelligence. I like shorter chapters now. I didn't used to care. I can read books with longer chapters. It's just a little harder for me. I have to like really like it. I've listened to audiobooks for the first time several times because I have no memory of the previous listen. So I start listening to it and I'm like, this sounds familiar, but I don't have any memory of listening to this book, so I must not have listened to it. But I'm really good at guessing what's happening. That's odd. It's a little, it's a little quirk I have now. So even though I've accepted working within my limitations, I still get angry. I still get frustrated. I still get depressed about it sometimes. But I'm getting better at getting over it a little faster. I want to be really clear. I'm still figuring all of this out. I still have periods where I can't read at all. I still get frustrated when I see booktubers talking about reading 200 or more books a year when I'm proud of my little handful. This isn't a success story with a neat little bow on top. This is an ongoing process. Some months are better than others. Some books work when others don't. Some days my brain cooperates. Other days it doesn't. And that's not a failure. That's just reality when you're working with a brain that functions differently. But here's what I want you to know. Having some reading back in my life, even if it looks completely different than it did before, has been worth every small step for me. Those middle grade books that I was a little embarrassed about, some of them are now among my favorite stories. The slow progress that used to frustrate me, it taught me to actually savor stories instead of rushing through them. I still can't handle slow burns though. Like slow burns are like even worse for me now. I just can't do it. I was inspired to make this video because I realized that sharing my reading struggles might help others who are on similar journeys. We don't have to have it all figured out to help each other. If you are struggling to get back into reading, or if reading has become difficult for you for any reason, be patient with yourself. Start much smaller than you think you need to. Give yourself permission to quit books, to take notes, to read below your level, to take breaks. Your reading journey doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It's yours. So I'd like to know, what's your experience been with trying to get back into reading? Are there strategies that have worked for you? Or are you still facing challenges? Let me know in the comments. We're all just figuring this out together. Make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss the rest of this series. Next week, I'll be talking about how to retrain your brain from screen dopamine to book dopamine, specifically for people who want to become readers but don't know where to start. If you've ever felt like books are too slow or too boring compared to your phone, that video is going to be for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it helpful and that you enjoyed watching it. See you next time. Bye.